All right, let's talk about Bitcoin. It's one of those topics that's just everywhere. It's a financial revolution, it's an internet mystery, and yeah, it's got a ton of controversy. So let's dive in and try to make sense of it all.
Our story starts with something you've probably heard about, but it's just too good not to tell again. Back in 2010, a programmer named Laszlo Hanyecz gets a little hungry. He goes online and makes the first ever real-world purchase with Bitcoin. He pays 10,000 Bitcoins for 2 pizzas. Seemed like a decent deal at the time, right?
Well, here's the wild part. Today, those 10,000 Bitcoins he traded for a couple of pies, they're worth over $400 million. Yeah, let that sink in. It's a number that's almost impossible to wrap your head around, and it perfectly captures the absolutely insane journey Bitcoin's been on.
And that really is the heart of the matter, isn't it? How in the world did some obscure digital token, once worth less than a pizza topping, explode into one of the most valuable and debated assets on the planet?
To get that answer, we've got to go back, way back, to the very beginning. Let's start with Bitcoin's mysterious origin and unpack how this whole new kind of money even came to be.
You know, Bitcoin didn't just appear out of thin air. The idea of digital cash had been brewing for decades. We're talking about concepts like DigiCash back in the 80s, and then B-Money and BitGold in 98. These were brilliant, pioneering ideas, but none of them ever really got off the ground. It wasn't until 2008, when someone registered the domain bitcoin.org, that all these different threads finally started weaving together.
And at the very center of it all is this ghost, Satoshi Nakamoto. That's the name, the pseudonym for the person, or maybe even a group of people, who wrote the Bitcoin white paper in 2008 and switched the network on a year later. They were there at the start, and then in 2011, they just vanished. Poof, gone. The creator of an asset now worth billions is still a complete and total mystery. It's wild.
Okay, so we kind of know who, or who we don't know, created it. But how does this thing actually work? Let's pop the hood and take a look at the digital engine that keeps Bitcoin running. And don't worry, we're going to keep this simple.
The absolute core of Bitcoin is the blockchain. And honestly, the easiest way to picture it is just as a shared public notebook. Every single transaction gets recorded on a page or a block. Once that page is full, it's locked and chained to the page before it. This creates a chain of blocks, a blockchain, that's permanent and public, making it incredibly secure and almost impossible to cheat.
So who gets to add the new pages to this notebook? Well, that's where mining comes in. You can think of it like a massive worldwide competition. Computers all over the globe are racing to solve these super complex math puzzles. The first one to find the solution gets to validate the latest batch of transactions, add that new block to the chain, and as a reward for their work, they get paid in newly created Bitcoins. It's a pretty clever system that keeps the network secure and distributes new coins.
Now this next part, this is what really makes Bitcoin different from, say, the US dollar. Built right into its DNA is something called the halving. About every 4 years, the reward that miners get for solving a puzzle gets cut in half. This means it gets harder and harder to create new Bitcoins over time, which creates digital scarcity. And here's the crucial part. Unlike regular currencies that governments can print more and more of, there's a hard cap. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins in existence, period.
And you can see this halving in action right here. When Bitcoin started in 2009, the reward for mining a block was 50 Bitcoin. Then it got cut to 25, then 12.5. By 2020, it was down to just 6.25. This automatic, predictable reduction in supply, that's the core economic engine driving the whole thing.
Of course, the story of Bitcoin isn't all clean code and economics. Oh no, the early days were a wild, chaotic ride. So let's get into the scandals, the crashes, and the just unbelievable stories that really forged Bitcoin's reputation for years.
So picture it. The year is 2014. If you were into Bitcoin, you used an exchange called Mt. Gox. It was the biggest, the most popular place to trade. And then one day, it just vanished. The website went offline, everything went dark.
And then the bombshell dropped. A mind-blowing 850,000 Bitcoins had been stolen in a hack. It was a total catastrophe that sent shockwaves everywhere, and it was a brutal wake-up call about how risky the Wild West of the early crypto world really was.
And it wasn't just huge corporate hacks. The stories got personal, and sometimes absolutely gut-wrenching. Take James Howells. In 2013, he was cleaning his desk and just tossed out an old hard drive. As he said later, "I remembered the hard drive. I had 7,500 bitcoins on it. I threw it in the bin." Those coins, now worth a fortune, are probably sitting under a mountain of trash in a landfill somewhere. Ouch. So you can see how this stuff started to pile up. You had the Silk Road marketplace on the dark web, which tied Bitcoin to crime. You had the Mt. Gox collapse. And later, you had these massive pyramid schemes like BitConnect that ripped people off for billions. All of this created a really negative image, a reputation that, honestly, Bitcoin is still trying to shake off. But, despite all that chaos, something really interesting started to happen. Bitcoin started to grow up. It began its long journey from the weird fringes of the internet right onto the trading floors of Wall Street. This is the story of how Bitcoin went mainstream.
Nowadays, if you want to invest in Bitcoin, it is a completely different world. You've got a few main options. For traditional folks, there are ETFs. They're regulated and trade on the stock market. You can also just use familiar apps, like your banks or PayPal's. Or, if you want more control, you can go straight to a crypto exchange. Each one has its pros and cons, from how easy it is to how much you pay in fees.
And those ETFs, wow, they were a huge game changer. Just look at this. When the very first gold ETF launched, it took 2 years to gather $10 billion in assets. The new Bitcoin ETFs, they did it in 2 months. That is just a tidal wave of money from big-time investors flooding into the space.
Then, in 2021, something happened that almost nobody saw coming. An entire country, El Salvador, made Bitcoin an official, legal currency right alongside the US dollar. Call it a bold experiment, call it a massive risk. Either way, it was a major step for Bitcoin's legitimacy on the world stage.
Which brings us right back to that big, central question we started with. Is this whole thing a financial revolution in the making, or is it just a super risky, overhyped bubble? Let's break down the core debate.
So here it is, the two sides of the coin. On one hand, the fans will tell you it's decentralized. No government or bank can control it. It's secure because of the blockchain, and it has the potential for mind-blowing returns. But the critics have strong points too. The price swings are absolutely insane. Governments could crack down on it at any moment. And yeah, it still has that reputation problem. Both sides are kind of right.
Look, for anyone thinking about getting involved, you have to be clear-eyed about the risks, and they are significant. The price volatility can wipe you out. Scams are everywhere, and unlike your bank account, if you lose your private keys, your password basically, your Bitcoin is gone, forever. No one can get it back for you. Plus, you've still got the huge environmental concerns from mining and the constant threat of new government rules.
So where does that leave us? From a late-night pizza order to a trillion-dollar asset? From a currency for the dark web to a darling of Wall Street, the story of Bitcoin is without a doubt one of a kind. And we're all still watching it unfold, waiting to find out the answer to that one last question. Is this the actual future of money, or is it just the most spectacular, fascinating bubble we've ever seen? The jury is still out.